Assalamualaikum everyone and good morning and welcome to April's distinguished lecture series on the way forward in the Indus waters dispute. Our distinguished guest today is Syed Meher Ali Shah, who currently serves as the Pakistan Commissioner for Indus Waters. In his capacity as the Pakistan Commissioner for Indus Waters, he heads Pakistan's delegation in all correspondence and negotiations pertaining to waters of the Indus with India and is the focal person from Pakistan on all issues related to the Indus Waters Treaty. He is part of the team representing Pakistan in the current litigation against India at the Permanent Court of Arbitration and was part of the team that represented Pakistan in the historic Baghliyar and Kishanganga arbitration cases, appearing as a witness on hydrology in the Kishanganga case as well. Mr. Shah is a professional water resource engineer possessing a master's degree in water resource engineering from the University of Engineering and Technology, Lahore. During his professional career, Mr. Shah has served in the Water Resources Division of NESPAC for more than 17 years, where he worked on various strategic projects, including transboundary water disputes between Pakistan and India. His expertise in water resource management has allowed him to serve on several projects of national importance, including the improvement of water resource management of the Indus Basin, which involved the development of a reliable and transparent flow measurement system for barrages and canals. He has also worked on the Mangla Dam Rising Project, the Sukhi Kinari Hydropower Project, the integrated development of Chitral, Swat, and Kabul rivers in Pakistan, and the development of flood early warning system for the Indus Basin in Pakistan. On the international front, he has served in water resources and flood sector projects in the Mazandaran province of Iran, Al-Bahar region of Saudi Arabia, and Haima region of Oman. Thank you. I would now request Brigadier Rashid, Acting President, to please come and say a few words.
Thank you, Imam. Mr. Mayor, Chairman, Indus Water Commission, Pakistan. Ambassador Riaz Mohammad Khan, Ambassador Shafqat Khala Kaka Khail, Ambassador Durrani, Ms. Aisha, and Ambassador Tariq Usman Haider. Sir, a very warm welcome to you all on a subject which is close to heart of every Pakistani these days. So, Indus Water Commission and its evolution and how it impacts Pakistan's water and food security is a saga of missed opportunities as well as emerging possibilities. Pakistan and India, they share the same hydrological profile, same watersheds, and once after the partition, both countries faced their political problems. These problems got translated into animosities, and Indus Water Treaty that was signed on 19th of September 1960 was a consequence of finding a solution. And this is a treaty that is held despite several wars and near war situations like Kargil. At least this is an internationally brokered treaty that has stood its ground. Of late, there were certain observations, debates in the media, also in the experts level, because India wanted to effect some modifications, and there was a fear, many unfounded, many well-founded, of the treaty coming a cropper because of these political differences and Indian continual water aggression. But when these legal aspects are analyzed, those do not pass muster on the bar of legal scrutiny, as there is no provision in the treaty which allows for a unilateral withdrawal by India. We are indeed fortunate here to have Mr. Meher Ali Shah, who is an expert in his own right, not only because of his incumbent slot, but because of his scholarship and his professional competence. He is a person who knows a lot about water source engineering, and he's been dealing with several negotiations at different fora. And I'm sure we'll all stand educated after this session. Pakistan faces perennial water shortage problems. The IRSA report, which clearly lays out that 37% of Kharif shortage is being experienced, and the water shortage is the issue of life and death for a country which is starved for food. We also know that water accounting has been our Achilles heel, because poor telemetry arrangements, poor transboundary coordination issues between India and Pakistan. So those complicate this issue, and we are ourselves to be blamed for not doing a very good job of water accounting, which is a precious asset. A country which was blessed with something like 5,072 cubic meter per capita in 1947 is now confronted with a state of around 982 cubic meters, if my figures are right, because these figures keep on changing. Then there's a profligate waste of resources. We waste something like 38 million acre feet down Kotri every year. And we do not conserve 20 million acre feet, which comes from Afghanistan, Kabul River, which if we had built Kalabagh Dam, we would have conserved. I think Mr. Mayor Ali Shah would be more competent, and he will, put us wise on aspects related to the responsibilities of lower riparian and the responsibilities that are due to us, and we have to fulfill those obligations. If as a lower riparian we do not build storage reservoirs, we are giving opportunity to an upper riparian to starve us of our rightful share. There were other criticisms on the Indus Water Treaty that this was a treaty between two sets of engineers. So whenever an issue comes up, we start delving into the engineering details, under-sluice gates, storage levels, ability to desilt. But the major legal issues are hardly debated. So I think there is a requirement of a very strong capacity building at our level 2. And there's probably a requirement now of a transboundary organization. The transboundary organization that should be staffed with the hydrology experts, water diplomats, in fact, and other engineers, which should act as a bridge between the two countries and resolve these issues before they crop up and become insurmountable. So with these few words to frame the issue, I would not like to interpose much between myself and Mr. Mayor Ali Shah, who knows much more about the subject. And we, again, sir, we are indeed fortunate to have you around. And we will like to benefit, especially during the question answer session, by your knowledge and the facts that you want to lay out in front of us. So with these few words, I request you to come and share your thoughts.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Ladies and gentlemen, so I feel privileged that the Islamabad Policy Research Institute has invited me to share my thoughts on the Indus Waters Treaty and in the perspective of way forward for Pakistan. So in this regard, I have prepared a presentation which comprises basically two parts. So one is concerning that what is the Indus Waters Treaty and how does it deal with the rights and obligations when it comes to the utilization of the waters of the Indus Basin. Followed by so how this treaty, remained in implementation, and then how to take it forward. So I would start by showing the overview of the Indus Basin. You can see on the map a green hatched area. It's a polygon that is basically defining the boundary of the Indus Basin. And then you can see the black dotted line. This is the geographic boundary of Pakistan, which is to a certain extent called as international border, followed by a working boundary around Marala, and then the line of control. Beyond which there are the areas of Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. Then there is the area which lies in the Indus Basin is in China and and also part of Indus Basin lies in Afghanistan, from where the Kabul River is, coming and join eventually at Nowshera into the Indus. So we can see this is the main stem of Indus River, starting in China, crossing into the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. This is the area of Leh and Ladakh, and then it crosses the line of control and enters near Kharmang into the Gilgit-Baltistan area of Pakistan. Then it flows all the way down. There is Tarbela Dam, and then it flows down all the way up to Kotri, downstream Kotri, into the Arabian Sea. So the tributaries of Indus are the Jhelum River. This is the Jhelum originating from Anantnag area. This is the Buller Lake, and then it takes a turn, flows into a gorge, crossing from Baramulla. Then it crosses line of control at Chakoti, and then at Muzaffarabad. The Neelam is also joining the Jhelum, and then it flows down. There is Mangla Reservoir, and then it joins the Chenab at Trimu Headworks. Chenab is again a river which is originated in the Himachal Pradesh, and then it crosses into Jammu area, the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. Then it crosses the working boundary at Marala, and then enters into Pakistan into plains. Then is the Ravi, and then Beas and Satluj. The thing which I want to highlight on this map is that when it comes to utilization of the water of any flowing stream, so one needs to have the mountainous terrain as well as the plain areas in order to maximize its benefit. And if you see, you can see some undulations in this part and then the plain areas. So these undulations are the mountainous terrain, and then the plain areas are followed by the mountainous terrain. So in case of Satluj, Beas and Ravi, the rivers which are originated in the mountainous terrain gets open into the plain areas when they are already in the Indian territory. So India is able to develop the water as a resource in terms of construction of the storage dams, and then followed by construction of the diversion works, which we call the headworks or the barrages and the plain areas from where India can construct or take off the canals. The water which is stored in these storage reservoirs upstream in the mountains is released in a manner which can fulfill the irrigation demand of the canals which are constructed downstream in the plain areas in the Indian territory. But this is not the case so when it comes to Chenab, Jhelum or Indus, because these three are the rivers which when gets open into the plain areas are already in Pakistan. So the part of these rivers which traverses in the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir is only in the mountainous terrain. Therefore, the maximum benefit which India can take from the western rivers, from the waters of the western rivers, is in the form of hydropower generation, or maximum in the form of limited agricultural use or some domestic use or some navigational use like floating of timbers or. So this is important. And the other thing which I want to share is the basic statistics. The total area of Indus Basin is 1.16 million square kilometer. This is almost equivalent to the area of the Murray-Darling Basin. But if you compare the average annual contribution in terms of water of the Indus Basin, This is 6 times more than the water available in the Murray-Darling Basin in Australia. So we receive 171 million acre-feet of water throughout from all the sources of the Indus system of rivers. The distribution of Indus Basin among the 4 countries is that 47% lies in Pakistan, 39% in India or IIOJK, China 8%, and Afghanistan shares 6% of the area of Indus Basin. Western rivers out of 171 contributes 137 million acre-feet, and eastern rivers contribute 34 million acre-feet. So this is the basic, statistics in which I just want to point out that at the time of signing of the Indus Waters Treaty, if we discuss about 34 million acre-feet, almost 8 million acre-feet of water was already being utilized in the areas which are now part of Pakistan in the command areas of the Satluj River and the Ravi River. So Pakistan, as a part of bargain, not only surrendered its established water right of irrigated agriculture at the time of signing of the treaty, but also surrendered all the waters which used to flow all the way from the beds of these eastern rivers and then eventually end up into the delta areas, which used to contribute in terms of maintaining the ecology and sediment requirements of the delta areas. So that was also surrendered. And why was that done? That was just to make sure that the 2 nations, the 2 countries, the 2 states, having a hostile political relation with a very long background and history, should be able to coexist when it comes to water. So Pakistan, gave its consent at a larger political level. As Brigadier Saab was saying that so it is one of the criticism that perhaps engineers, see the treaty from their own prism. Yes, it is indeed a fact, even at the time of negotiation of the Indus Waters Treaty. So President Ayub Khan writes in his book, Friends, Not Masters, that I gathered almost more than 40 of engineers in Pakistan's house at Lahore. So that is presently the Governor House. And I told them that it is my responsibility to take this decision at this moment. And if any one of you tries to fiddle with this, so I will handle with them in my own way. So this was a political decision. But the point is that Pakistan, only agreed to forego the waters of the 3 eastern rivers just to make sure that Pakistan and India can coexist when it comes to water. This is the main infrastructure presently Pakistan have. Most of it was constructed as a consequence of the Indus Waters Treaty as replacement works. So presently we have 2 main reservoirs, Mangla and Tarbela, and Chashma is also a smaller one. We have almost 13 million acre-feet of water which we can store. It is almost 10% what we have, in terms of average annual. Almost 10,000 megawatt we are generating from hydropower. And we have 18 barrages and 45 canal systems. And then we have on-pump water courses. So we can see that these are the link canals. You can see these are the rivers on a schematic diagram. So this is the Indus, this is the Jhelum, this is Chenab, and then this is Ravi and Satluj. So the waters of the canal commands of the eastern rivers, that is the Satluj and the Ravi, are now being fed from the inter-river link canals, like we constructed Mangla and Tarbela. From Tarbela, we then developed Chashma Jhelum link canal and Tausa Parnad link canal to divert the water which we store in Tarbela reservoir at Indus into the Jhelum, and from Jhelum onwards to Primu, to Sidnai, and Sidnai to at Head Islam. And similarly from Mangla, we have here is the Rasool Barrage, and then we have a link canal called the Rasool Kadrabad, from Kadrabad to Balochi, Balochi to Suleimanki. So you can see that the water of Jhelum, how the water of Jhelum River is now being transferred into all the way up to Satluj, which is almost near the border. Suleiman Ki Barrage is at the border between Pakistan and India. And then this water is off-taken into Ford While Eastern Satkia canals. So this is the present infrastructure we have in Pakistan. Just to give you a glimpse, this is basically almost a 100 years record of average annual flow. You can see that on average, we can say that we are receiving 140 or 137 million acre feet of water, but then there are fluctuations. Starting all the way from the British colonial times, 1922-23, we have the records available in Pakistan. And we can see there were the blue lines are basically the wet years or the flood years, and the red are the drought years. So the basin had been experiencing both the flood years and the drought years, but the frequency of these extreme events have gone increased when we see in the recent past as compared to almost a century ago. So we can say that 4 out of 6 there are normal years, 1 out of 6 is dry or drought year, and 1 out of 6 is wet year. But then we can see that the flood years now, because of the climate change, these extreme events have started occurring in a chunk, one after another. This is the temporal distribution of water. What we receive in our basin is almost 100 days. During 100 days period, we receive almost 80% of the water. So the problem is that the demand or the demand pattern to utilize the water is not, is not consistent with the availability of water. We need water during these winter months, way beyond, so it is available in its natural setting. So what we need to do is that we need to basically cut this water and have it stored somewhere in the form of water storage reservoirs, and then release it to fulfill the demands during the lean months. So these are the lean months where the water gets very much less as compared to in the summers. Now coming to the Indus Waters Treaty, it has 12 articles and then 8 annexures, very substantive provisions already provided. The main subjects which deals the treaty are basically the water rights and obligations of both the parties on the eastern and the western rivers, then hydropower generation rights of India on the western rivers, agricultural use of water, then exchange of river and canal flow data on reciprocal basis, supply of advanced information about the flows and extraordinary floods, maintenance of international drains, which are the transboundary drains in terms of their quality and in terms of their geometry, future cooperation between the parties and permanent Indus Commission, and mechanisms of settlement of differences and disputes. If we talk about Article 1 is basically definition of various terms which are used in the treaty, and Article 2 provides, it basically deals with the provisions regarding the eastern rivers, in which, as I said, that the waters of the east of the Satluj, Beas and Ravi has been given and trusted to India for exclusive use, except for certain uses which are permitted to Pakistan, like the non-consumptive use and agricultural use as specified in Annexure B. I don't want to go into the details of these. If we see the preamble, it is very important that the government of India and the government of Pakistan, I would like to read it because it is, so to me, whenever I read it, so I, found more and more, wisdom in it. But the government of India and the government of Pakistan being equally desirous of attaining the most complete and satisfactory utilization of the waters of the Indus system of rivers, and recognizing the need, therefore, of fixing and delimiting, in a spirit of goodwill and friendship, the rights and obligations of each in relation to the other, concerning the use of these waters, and of making provision for the settlement in a cooperative spirit of all such questions as may hereafter arise in regard to the interpretation or application of the provisions agreed upon herein, have resolved to conclude a treaty such and such, and then these were the plenipotentiaries who signed this treaty. Now you can see At least I can say that almost 100 times. So I would have read this preamble and then tried to color code it and then read it in pieces and split it, try to understand reading it with the different provisions of the treaty, just to make sure that I should be able to understand the letter and spirit of the treaty without any bias. And we can see that preamble according to the Vienna Conventions of Laws of Treaty, when it comes to interpretation of the treaty, preamble has a very vital importance. It basically sets out that how to read and understand and implement and interpret and implement the treaty. So you can see by plain and simple reading of the preamble tells us, at least at the outset, that this is a treaty, some sort of instrument which is being done between the two states who have at least resolved that they are going to coexist when it comes to water in a spirit of goodwill and cooperation. And even if any question would arise in terms of application or interpretation of the treaty, so that would also be resolved in a cooperative spirit. And then they have, after understanding this basic fact, they have entered into this treaty through their plenipotentiaries, recognizing their full powers. The scholars which are present, so here, can better understand that what does mean the phrase full powers. And the full powers is written in the preamble with the capital, alphabets, full powers. So it has a legal meaning that the plenipotentiaries and their full powers, what does it mean? So this is the background which Pakistan is of the considered opinion that whenever it comes to implementation of the treaty, both India and Pakistan has to follow the spirit which is enunciated and laid down in its preamble, rather than bringing up all the political baggage or the hostile relation of the two countries which they are carrying all the way even before partition of the subcontinent. Then otherwise it is not going to implement. It is very simple. So Article 1, as I said, are the definitions. 16, so basically terms have been defined in this article. Article 2, we have just discussed. These are the exceptions which are allowed to Pakistan to use the waters of the eastern rivers. And then is the very famous and important Article 3. This is provisions regarding western rivers. So these are the exceptions. If you can see, Pakistan shall receive for unrestricted use. If you so whenever I see the formulation of the provisions of the treaty, so I always find that so there is a purpose. Like you will find some provisions which are permissive in nature, you will find some provisions which are prohibitive in nature, and then the formulation of the construct of that provision tells that what was the purpose and mind of the framer of the treaty when this provision was basically written. So you can see, like in case of eastern rivers, so it states that all the waters of the eastern rivers shall be available for the unrestricted use of India. So the permission is for India and exception is for Pakistan to utilize some of the waters. And same goes in Article 3, that Pakistan shall receive, it is an obligation for unrestricted use, all those waters of the western rivers which India is under obligation to let flow. So it means that there are certain waters of the western rivers which India is under obligation to let flow, not all the waters. And what are those waters? Which are the waters, remaining after making use of those waters by India under these four categories, which are the domestic use, non-consumptive use, agricultural use, not indefinite or unlimited agricultural use, but the use which is defined in Annexure C of the treaty. And similarly, generation of hydroelectric power use as defined in Annexure D. So these are the exceptions which are part of the treaty and permitted to India to make use of the waters of the western rivers, and beyond that, it cannot be. Then comes Article 4. These are basically the provisions which are specific to both eastern and western rivers. So you can see this primarily defines the specifics to avoid the material damage. Like the important one is paragraph 14. Uh, in the event that either party should develop a use of the waters of the rivers, which is not in accordance with the provisions of this treaty, that party shall not acquire by reason of such use any right, by prescription or otherwise, to a continuance of such use. Like India starts a project unilaterally without informing Pakistan, or even in, under intimation to Pakistan, and Pakistan objects to that use. And until and unless that objection is resolved, either at the level of Permanent Indus Commission or at the level of the two governments or at the level of the third forum like the neutral expert of the Court of Arbitration, just by virtue of developing that use. And by the time that question gets resolved, India completes that project. So by virtue of completion of that project, that it has become fait accompli, India does not acquire this right that that use has become legitimate. This is a very important provision. So these are the provisions which gave Pakistan confidence that the framers of the treaty were quite aware of the potential of agony which the lower riparian can face because of, in case the upper riparian start using its high-handedness or intransigence. We go to Article 6, just to give you that what kind of exchange of information has been included in this treaty as an obligation on both the parties, like daily gauge and discharge data of the rivers at all observation sites, and daily extractions, daily withdrawals, daily escapages from all canals, and daily deliveries. Back in 1960, you can imagine, when there was no, database software, no repositories, everything was manual. It was very tough to collect the data from the remote sites where, one takes, even in the present time, more than 24 hours, even in Pakistan. So this war and the daily means that on every day, whatever water will be gauged in terms of feet or depth unit and in terms of volume rate units will be observed and transferred to Pakistan, to both the countries on reciprocal basis. So just to give you an idea that the framers of the treaty were very much aware that in order to ensure transparency, it would be very important that parties should continue exchange of data in near real time. In addition to the data specified above, either party requests the supply of any data relating to the hydrology or to canal or reservoir operation connected with the river. Such data shall be supplied by the other party to the extent that these are available. Now, this is something which perhaps takes into account the future developments, like the framers of the treaty were, quite aware that there would be time in future when the frequency of data observation would get, increased, and the transmission of these data would become very easy because of the technology. So they have also incorporated in this that even if the parties desire to receive the data more frequently compared to at a daily interval, so that provision is also available. Article 7 is for the future cooperation. It is again, so the people who have interest in the Indus Waters Treaty quite oftenly, refer to the Article 7. In this article, I would like to take you to this provision, which is defined in its paragraph 2, that if a work would cause interference with the waters of any of the rivers, but would not, in the opinion of the party planning it, affect the other party, nevertheless, the party planning the work shall, on request, supply the other party. Like, for instance, if India is planning a project on its part, and it considers that this project is not going to adversely affect Pakistan, but if Pakistan considers that this project is going to affect Pakistan in an adverse manner, so upon a receipt of request from Pakistan, India has been put under an obligation to supply the design and its operational information to Pakistan. Then comes Article 8 that deals with the permanent Indus Commission, which is comprising two commissioners, one from Pakistan, one from India, which provides for qualification of the commissioner and composition, role of commissioners, and etc. So these are the roles and duties and obligations of the two commissioners, and the frequency of the meetings to meet at least once every year, and also when requested by either commissioner. So it is not that There cannot be more than one meeting in a year. But one meeting is, mandatory. Then comes very important article, Article 9 out of total 12 articles, settlement of differences and disputes. So I can share with you that in its first paragraph, it says that any question which arises between the parties concerning the interpretation or application of this treaty or the existence of any fact which, if established, might constitute a breach, shall first be examined by the Commission, which will endeavor to resolve the question by agreement. If the Commission does not reach agreement on any of the questions, then a difference will be deemed to have arisen, which shall be dealt with as follows. Now, there are two provisions under paragraph 2 of Article 9, A and B. And by the way, I would come to B later, but you would see when I would explain in some detail that the subparagraph B, which is on the screen, gets operated from paragraph subparagraph A of paragraph 2, which states that any difference, so the difference has arisen when the Commission cannot resolve a question despite, putting in their endeavor. So then the question will be converted into a difference. And how the difference would be dealt? According to which shall be dealt with as follows. And follows states that any difference which, in the opinion of either commissioners, falls within the provisions of Part 1 of Annexure F shall, at the request of either commissioner, be dealt with by a neutral expert. Now, what we understand from the plain and simple reading of this provision, that the commissioner, the aggrieved commissioner, has to opine whether or not the difference falls within the jurisdiction of the neutral expert. It is not, the treaty does not provide a self-propelling mechanism just to define the jurisdiction of the neutral expert. The jurisdiction of the neutral expert is defined in Annexure F in the form of 23 questions, but then that jurisdiction gets invoked if the aggrieved commissioner feels that the difference falls within the jurisdiction of the neutral expert. So it is very important that in the opinion of either commissioner, now we are basically dealing with the difference and how the difference is to be dealt. The difference is to be dealt either by way of referral, its referral to the neutral expert or to the court of arbitration. Now, how the difference would go to the neutral expert if the commissioner opines so. But then there is another interesting thing, that if one commissioner or the aggrieved commissioner considers that in his opinion the difference does not fall within the jurisdiction of the neutral expert, and the respondent commissioner considers that no, I do not agree with you, with your opinion, and I still feel that the difference falls within the jurisdiction of the neutral expert, then the Annexure F of the Indus Waters Treaty states that invariably the difference will go to the neutral expert. But that will only happen when the responding commissioner would disagree with the opinion of the aggrieved commissioner. And if the responding commissioner would not disagree with the opinion of the aggrieved commissioner, then the difference will be dealt with as the aggrieved commissioner would opine. May that be to be dealt with by the neutral expert or by the court of arbitration. So this is a very clear-cut scheme of the treaty, on which perhaps, so I'm expecting a few questions so when I finish this presentation. So that is how the Article 9 operates. And then if the difference does not come within the provisions of paragraph 2, so we already saw that how a difference cannot come under the provisions of paragraph 2A, like if the commissioner do not or does not opine that this matter is to be referred to the neutral expert, then it would go. It would the subparagraph B of paragraph 2 of Article 9 gets operated, and then there is a detailed procedure of this operation. And then there is also another test, so that says that provided at the discretion of the Commission, any difference may either be dealt with by neutral expert if both the commissioners agree that. So both of us agree that the matter needs to be referred to the neutral or to the court of arbitration. Again, there will be no disagreement. Or may be settled in any other way agreed upon by the Commission. So Commission has full powers. Like they can decide, any other manner, even beyond the neutral expert or the court of arbitration, whatever they deem appropriate in order to resolve the matter. So Commission has been given full powers. But these things only happen when you have a good relation, a good working relation, a good, background. So moving to, so these are the details of Court of Arbitration and neutral experts, then emergency provisions. So these were applicable prior to 31st March 1965 concerning replacement works. Article 12, Article 11 is general provisions. So it is also very interesting to share with you that this treaty governs the rights and obligations of each party with respect only to the use of the waters of the rivers and matters incidental thereto. And nothing shall be construed as constituting a recognition or waiver other than those rights or claims which are expressly recognized or waived in this treaty, like their territorial claims would not be dealt with under this treaty. Nothing shall be construed establishing any general principle of law or any precedent. And the rights and obligations of each party shall remain unaffected by any provisions contained in or by anything arising out of the execution of any agreement establishing the Indus Basin. So these are also very important. Then comes the last article of this treaty, which provides the final provisions, and paragraph 3 and 4, I would emphasize in today's presentation that the provisions of this treaty may, from time to time, be modified by a duly ratified treaty concluded for that purpose between the two governments. So a reopener clause was, provided back in 1960 that if it necessitates, in the times to come, that there is a genuine need of modification of this treaty, so that is not foreclosed. That is given, but under certain conditions. And what are those conditions? Those are very important. That the modified treaty has to be concluded between the two governments. So the basically agreement of the parties to the treaty, particularly Pakistan and India, is very, very important. It cannot be done unilaterally. And it further states in its paragraph 4, the provisions of this treaty shall continue in force until terminated by a duly ratified treaty. So as such, if we see the treaty, so treaty does not recognize that, any one of the two parties like Pakistan or India has this discretion to abrogate this treaty unilaterally or to make this treaty dysfunctional until and unless there is a modified treaty in place. So this was signed, as we already saw, and these are the annexures, A to H. Just a summary, a question arises just for the benefit of those also who have read this treaty but may not be successfully to that extent that they could extract the minute details. So I brought them up on the screen. 1.3 million acres of land, is the area which India can irrigate from the waters of the western rivers, in which on the effective date, that is 1st of April 1960, India's irrigated agricultural use was accepted as equivalent to 642,000 acres. And beyond that, 701,000 acres, with this breakdown into the three basins. And then India can also store water on the western rivers by way of construction of water storages. So the total storage is 3.6. And these are the categories under which India can develop its storage under the general storage, power storage, and flood storage. And then, like, for example, when it comes to the Jhelum, main means the main stem of Jhelum, not its tributaries. Like Neelam is a tributary of Jhelum, Punch is a tributary of Jhelum, but Jhelum River itself is a main stem. So on the Jhelum main, India is not allowed to develop any kind of storage. So this is the storage, extract. Then comes Annexure D, and Annexure D, the formulation of Annexure D is that it stems out from Article 3 of treaty. It deals with the generation of hydroelectric power by India. It has 5 parts. Part 3 is the main, which deals with the new runoff river plants, and then the Appendix 2 is basically the data details. So Article 3, under its paragraph 8, deals with the designs of the projects, and these provisions are made in a manner that the capability of India to control the natural pattern of flow in the western rivers remains limited. So these design provisions have been crafted in a manner so that India cannot manipulate with the natural pattern of the flows of the western rivers. So these are the technical terms. Perhaps I would not go much into details: freeboard, pondage, spillway locations, intakes. Just to give you a quick, illustrative, a quick idea using the real aid of this illustration, you can see that this is, a river flowing on a slope, and then we constructed a concrete dam over here. By way of providing a spillway, it is an opening and it is a steel gate which is stopping water to flow beyond it. So if you place the spillway or outlet close to the bottom of the dam or near to the riverbed, so it would provide an opportunity to the operator of the dam to empty the reservoir all the way up to the gate level. Whereas the treaty does not allow to draw down the water below this red line, that is the dead storage level. So dead storage level is defined as per the criteria given in the treaty. The maximum fluctuation or the drawdown which India is permitted under the treaty is up to the dead storage level. What does it mean? It means that if water cannot be drawn down below the dead storage level, which is defined with this red dotted line, there is no point in placing this outlet below this dead storage level. And this is precisely the language of the treaty, that there shall be no outlet below the dead storage level. Now, this is the main objection which Pakistan always raise or do against India's design, and then India tries to justify its design on one reason or the other, and Pakistan can fairly see and has substantiated several times that India is trying to circumvent with the provisions of the treaty. Why the framers of the treaty provided this language in the treaty that there shall be no outlet below the debt storage level? Then the treaty says that the water level in the reservoir cannot be drawn down below the debt storage level except in an unforeseen emergency. So, and for that emergency, treaty says that the outlets can be provided below debt storage level of a minimum size and the highest possible location. So this was contested by Pakistan in 2010 to 2013 Kishanganj arbitration, and India tried to justify. Court of arbitration ruled fully in favor of Pakistan, and also remarked when India sought clarification on the court's decision that it is for India to secure a place where India can construct and operate its hydropower projects in a manner which would not get adversely affected because of the sediments. It is part of the treaty's bargain that India has to, honor its commitment, and India cannot construct and operate projects where these kind of large outlets would be placed, which would provide India the capability to draw down water below debt storage level. So it is a settled principle now. Now, India is consistently benefiting from Indus Waters Treaty. I'm coming to end my presentation. Like, India has developed out of 701,000 acres. Presently, India is 145,000, 150,000 acres. So it varies, plus minus 10,000 acres, depending upon the water availability and cropping seasons. 3.6 million acre feet storage is allowed to India, out of which India is presently pursuing construction of 88,000 acre feet in the form of Pakallul. And design and operational constraints are there. As such, there is no bar in terms of defining megawatts, that how much megawatt India can develop on the western rivers. But present capacity of India's hydropower on western rivers is 3,478 megawatts. This is PCIW's office own reckoning. From its own reckoning, we have done a research with the help of our stakeholders. And we came to the fact that, so what about the future plans of India in terms of development of hydropower? So you can see that from 3,500, they have plans almost to make it, almost 4 times of whatever they have presently. And 89% of their potential lies in Chenab and 2 to 9% in Jhelum and Indus. This is with regard to timeline. When we see the state of preparedness on part of India, so we can see that 14, like there are 65 projects. So out of 65, there are 14 projects which are at advanced stages of implementation or being implemented presently, which can be completed tentatively by 2030. And these are those projects which are at the advanced stage, in which these are in Chenab Basin, these are in Jhelum, and these are in Indus Basin. Now, India's approach to implement Indus Waters Treaty, we fairly see that design of the projects circumvent treaty's design criteria in terms of providing freeboard, excessive freeboard, providing deep spillways, providing excessive pondage. Then we also noted in past instances of start of construction without informing Pakistan, like in case of Chutak, Wular, and then protracted dialogue at bilateral level on the projects without resolving. So this is not a spirit which is in the treaty. Delay in supply of project design information. The treaty says that India is under an obligation to provide the design of its new runoff river hydroelectric plants at least 6 months. At least 6 months before start of construction of river works. Now, India starts, reading in a literal manner that they are only duty bound to provide this information to Pakistan 6 months before, not a day before. This is something which is, which flies into the face of the spirit of the treaty. The treaty says that if you have that information available with you, now what happens? The people who know with the development of the infrastructure projects, they can understand that the scope of modification in a project design gets diminished to almost negligible when you award the contract of the works and the contractor gets mobilized. Now, when the contractor gets mobilized, it does not immediately start working within the river. It gets mobilized, it establishes its camps to stay there. It, makes available the stockpiles of the construction material, brings there the construction machinery, and so many things. Now, India reads, the treaty in a manner that treaty puts India under obligation to provide the design of new runoff river hydroelectric plant at least 6 months before start of construction of river works. But the start, if I can share that the contract of the Amir Basha Dam project was awarded back in 2021, and any time before December 2023, there is hardly any work going on in the river of the Indus. Now, what India would do, that India would, awarded the contract to the contractor. Contractor gets mobilized. It has established its whole paraphernalia, completed the river diversion works, and once the water gets diverted into the temporary diversion tunnels, only then India shared a set of information with Pakistan that please satisfy yourself whether or not my design conforms to the criteria laid down in the treaty. So one can very easily understand that what is the scope of convergence at that time. If Pakistan raises a general objection, which even if hypothetically India concedes that, well, it needs to be because it is in a clear violation of the treaty and we agree it needs to be modified, this modification would have a lot of cost in terms of variation of a civil contract, because you have awarded the contract to the contractor according to a certain design, which has now, after award of the contract, has come under question and is going to be changed. So this is something on which Pakistan generally feels that the India's approach towards implementation of treaty is not, does not conform to the bona fide, yardstick or the parameters. Then undue tours of inspection, it is again on record. Limited supply of advanced flood information. Now what next? I believe that if I leave it to the audience, what next, it will be, most appropriate. But so what I can share is that Article 12, as we said, that provisions of this treaty shall continue in force until terminated by a duly ratified treaty. And then comes the rationality, between the two states in their relations is something which can be debated, which can be understood, which is understood. And that is the big backdrop. Rather than commenting on it, I believe that there are, former diplomats, ambassadors, other scholars from various walks of life. Continuation of the treaty is something which Pakistan feels is very, very important, and I can share that it suits both the countries to coexist and avoid future water crisis. This is my considered opinion based on my professional, understanding of water resources and dealing with the treaty. Pakistan should continue urging upon India to implement the treaty in letter and spirit to avoid long-term conflict. India to demonstrate actions honoring the treaty by frequent and meaningful permanent Indus Commission dialogue, regular tours of inspections, reliable and complete data exchange, creating opportunities to resolve objections at initial stages. As I said, initial stages, I explained that what are the initial stages. And then there may be many countervailing strategies like creating a shadow of future in favor of Pakistan, as Brigadier Saab was saying while framing the tone of this lecture, that what Pakistan should do. So that is one aspect, that what is coming from India, what is not coming from India. But then also it is equally important, if not more, that what we need to do to put our house in order. So that can also act as a shadow of future for India in order to curb India to, pursue its ambitions or hegemonistic plans, like technical, diplomatic, political, and legal spheres. All are important. Investment decisions leading to a water secure Pakistan. So I stop here and I thank you for your patience. And now I'm available for your questions and answers.
Thank you so much, sir. That was very helpful. We have the floor open for questions now. Okay. Yes. They're giving you the mic.
Shasab, it was wonderful. I've learned quite a few things, and I'm convinced that you know your job. And very quickly, if you allow me 3 minutes, I'll finish. Actually,
Introduce yourself.
my name is Ty Versa. I'm a working journalist. And very quickly, once upon a time, World Bank interviewed me for a job. They shortlisted me as the only candidate, gave me an orientation from Washington and here, and presented to the government for the project which the government wants to be hired. Government minister asked me, can you look after the party profile and all that and media cell, whatever? I said, no. Then what are you going to do? I said, you are a privatization commission. If you want to privatize steel mill, you need to negotiate with the people to get narrative, because we ultimately settle for a narrative which is based on jurisprudence and the prudences. So we'll talk to them, bring back some notes and give it to the management or the board, get their feedback and go to them. And so this will ultimately slaughter the your case, the communication is part of the operations. Your case as well, internal communication is part of your operations. But with whom? The basic stakeholders are people of Pakistan. And I'm very frankly saying the armed forces as well. Because ultimately it would be then their responsibility to fight and all that. They say Farooq Lawari said that water wars would be there and all that. So this narrative, I think, is more important than legal framework and all. And I don't see it happening. And I was looking after, I was watching in previous negotiation, and there was another Shah Saab, Jamaat Ali Shah Saab. And you know what happened? Because of that communication, there was no binding on either side as well. Thank you.
So I note that you are referring to have more engagement by the Pakistan Commissioner for Indus Waters with the people of Pakistan and general masses, which you believe is not taking place to the extent which you feel is required. So I respect your opinion. The least I can share is that so far as the larger decision making is concerned, so rest assured that Pakistan Commissioner for Indus Water is a representative, but whatever decisions are taken in terms, so when it comes to engagement with India, so all the stakeholders are taken on board, and it always remain a collective decision which takes into account all the aspects. But so far as the engagement with the people of Pakistan is concerned, at times, so I'm now sharing my own perspective. At times, I genuinely feel that things should be shared with the masses. But most of the time, and by the way, so I only feel so when I listen or I hear in the media, like so many misnomers, like, everyone has the right to speak and everyone understands or considers himself or herself that they know about the subject because water is very touchy subject. So they start, commenting on such delicate issues, which are otherwise not recommended to discuss, until and unless you have a very deep understanding, knowing so many aspects. It is not only the treaty, but then there is a background. Then there is another party, your adversary, who is trying to pick the points or those aspects in the by just labeling them that this is a narrative which is being developed in Pakistan, and on the basis of which now we are going to take this decision. So these are very critical and crucial things where an extreme care is required to be exercised before making it as part of an open debate. It's not just a cricket match or an Olympic game on which everyone would start, So all we need to care is that we need to make sure that the people who have been entrusted this job, whether or not they are capable, they are doing it in an inclusive manner, among, taking on board all those circles which are concerned from all these spheres, as I mentioned, political sphere, diplomatic sphere, technical spheres, legal spheres. If all these areas are, addressed, so I think things are in a better shape.
Thank you. Sir.
Thank you. Tariq Haidar, I'm a retired ambassador. Thank you very much for a very learned presentation. I had some experience of the treaty during the Baglia Dam discussions and matters. I just have one question to ask before asking others. That is that the title of your subject was The Way Forward. Basically, what you said is, which is quite correct, is that it's in our interest to continue with the treaty and to have India implemented. But the real thing is now is that the Indians have asked for negotiations on modifying the treaty. I understand we are ready to enter those negotiations. And that is the area that we'd like to listen from you about. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I tried to share my views to the extent I felt appropriate. And further, I can share with you is that so far, if you ask me as Pakistan Commissioner for Indus Waters, I frankly don't know that what are the precise concerns on part of India when they have invited Pakistan while invoking Article 12. So therefore, we have asked them, we have invited them, we have basically responded them to listen their concerns, and then we would be in a better position to respond. But otherwise, we are very clear so far as Pakistan's perspective is concerned, that this treaty is very important for both the states to coexist. This needs to be continued. And we are very clear that this treaty is very much clear and it provides very substantive, provisions. There is hardly any vagueness. So this is exactly what I tried to make during my presentation. So I have been sharing with you all the details of the treaty, which I normally don't do because it is quite soporific otherwise. So Pakistan's 3 or 4 main, perspectives are like the same as I just shared. And we will definitely respond to India when India would come and sit with us and would share the details that what are their concerns, what do they feel that what are the change in circumstances which now have happened, and India feels that this treaty needs to be modified, or what is that material breach which has been committed by either of the party, which needs to be addressed. So these are the things on which we are not yet very clear, merely from the text of the letter from India. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Media that India has asked for a response from Pakistan, and that has to be given within 90 days. And probably some letter has been sent also to India. So if you feel appropriate, could you share those details?
Exactly. I think I have so precisely shared the details. So first of all, I want to clarify that the 90 days duration or whatever was written by India to Pakistan finds no place into the treaty. There is as such no provision in the treaty to give, a time frame to the other party to respond, and particularly when it comes to invocation of Article 12. But keeping that aside, as I said, that Pakistan, there is absolutely nothing to hide. India wrote to us and we responded. And we just told them that Pakistan is happy to hear the concerns of India at the level of Permanent Indus Commission. Permanent Indus Commission is basically, my counterpart basically wrote me. And so under the treaty, both the commissioners are the regular channel of communication for implementation of the treaty. So Pakistan has just responded to India that we are happy to hear your concerns. Whenever they would get back to us, so we would accordingly proceed.
Thank you.
First of all, thank you very much. It was very educative presentation by you for me. I have a couple of things. One is that, do you have some kind of arrangement to invite experts for regular meetings at the Indus Water Commission to inform them and also to get their ideas? Regular could be once in a year or twice in a year. So my first question is this. Secondly, whenever I read articles, I don't have in-depth knowledge of Indus Water Treaty, but whenever I read articles, one finds that they start usually with this, that water availability, that it used to be whatever in 1947, and now it has reduced per capita by 7 times or 6 times, whatever, without referring that the population has also increased 7 times or more. So is this kind of information or argument is it helping us in any way, or does it create some kind of a bias among public against the treaty? Although I personally believe that these kinds of treaties are always important for the lower riparian more than the upper riparian. So, some of these things. One other point is that there is this kind of argument that India is building. Now I don't know that much, but earlier on, when I was in the government, that India is building dozens of dams and pondage and all that on these western rivers, etc., all that. So my argument at that time used to be that, look, as far as the Foreign Office is concerned, I know that there are only 4 cases. There used to be Bagliar, there was the Tulbul or Wuller, then there was Neelam Jalam. So I said, there is a provision in the treaty that whenever we are concerned about a project, then first the Indus Water commissioners, they meet, and then if they ask us in the Foreign Office, then we will take up at the Foreign Office level. But these are the only 4 areas where we know of. We have not received any other information. So how do you deal with this kind of information when it gets to the public, that there are dozens of plans, or does it create difficulties for you, or is it something that we need to keep on doing so that to keep the Indians on the alert, at least? Thank you.
Just so coming to my mind on a lighter side, the last sentence which you said, that if India, which is under obligation to let Pakistan know that whatever, so what they are doing, so why should we disclose them, make them alert that what we are doing? But so that was on a lighter side. I can share this comfort with you that with the assistance of Pakistan Commissioner for Indus Water stakeholders, without naming them, with the use of latest technology, Pakistan Commissioner for Indus Water has equipped with a dedicated cell, which regularly monitors the developments in the upper watersheds of the western and both eastern rivers. And we meet periodically. We basically document it, then we deliberate it, and then we take further decisions to take up the matter at various levels, including the commission and internally. So that is in place, and even when these latest technologies were not available, so Pakistan Commissioner for Indus Waters was aware back in 1989 that India has started some exploratory works for construction of Kishan Ganga. Similarly, in 1983, Pakistan Commissioner for Indus Waters got aware that India has started exploratory works on Buller Barrage, which basically Indian side call as a Tulbul navigation project, Pakistan side call as a Buller Barrage. So even from those times, and now we are better equipped compared to past, and we are now, on it. But on a formal channel, Pakistan Commissioner always engages, like just to share with you, almost 2 or 3 weeks ago, I received some call from some people, living along the Satluj River, that they heard from some media or some radio broadcast that India has released some water in Satluj because of some cloudburst or whatever. So I immediately contacted my counterpart, and so he responded to me about the facts, whatever those were. So formal communication is also in place and internal communication. Coming back to your first question that whether we have any formal group of technical experts to allow them to convene in the PCI with the PCIW and share them. Yes, we have. We have technical stakeholders, particularly we have WAPDA, NESPAC, and Punjab Irrigation Department, as well as Pakistan Meteorological Department. So these are the technical departments which have the mandate, which is directly concerned with the subjects being dealt with under the Indus Waters Treaty, about the floods, about the future development of projects, their designs, whether they are not, whether or not they are conforming to the criteria, etc. So we take input from them, and we receive quite a useful input. We also have inputs from the technical component of our strategic stakeholders. They also give us their insight. So that is already in place, and so at least we meet twice in a year. One before holding the annual meeting of the commission, and one during the flood season. And if they both coincide, then of course once during that time, and normally there may be more than one meetings, even if these two meetings coincide. So we can meet regularly to discuss India's future projects. When we receive the designs of Indian new projects, so we circulate it among the technical stakeholders and seek their comments. Then a discussion starts. Then we keep on communicating with each other through correspondence, and then after a while convening meetings. So this is an arrangement which is already in place, and we are open to improve it. If you have any specific suggestion, we can also consider that. There is no bar in terms of internal communication with the relevant stakeholders. The other question is, you have very rightly said that when we discuss about the reduction in water availability, particularly per capita water availability. So the important thing is the denominator, and the denominator is population. If we don't discuss, or we just mute or do not highlight that the main cause is increase in population, then definitely the message which people receive, I'm not saying that the one who is trying to put across the message has this intention, but the reader or the people so they come under an impression that perhaps this treaty was something which was very badly done, and that was totally against Pakistan. I'm not advocating for or against, or the merits or demerits of the treaty, just saying that this is how. So I always say that per capita water availability, besides the denominator part, again, if you see, there are several indices of water scarcity to gauge the water scarcity. One of them is called the Falcon Mark. And the Falcon Mark index is this, which tells us that if your water availability per capita reduces to 1,000, so you would be placed in a water scarce, and then water stressed, and then water abundant. It is one of the several indices. And then this index, like any other index, has its own assumptions and its own limitations. And it clarifies that whenever you want to use this index, you want to gauge your state of affairs using this index, you need to be careful that the assumptions, the underlying assumptions, are consistent with the assumptions where you are going to apply this index or not. So people in Pakistan, without paying any heed to this, they simply put a sum, a mathematic sum. This much is water available, this much is population, divide it, and start telling people that Pakistan is going to face a D-Day. I'm not saying that Pakistan is doing very well, but just making an argument on the basis that per capita water availability has gone down, therefore we should start saying, or we should start proving that this document was right and that was wrong, and government is right and that one is wrong. This is not the way. But on the other side, I also see from my experience that perhaps it is all across the world, the frequency may may vary, that the political economy, at the end of the day, the political economy is the prime mover, is the governing factor. If you see, I place, so in order to make myself understand the things into three main spheres. One is the technical or the science and engineering sphere, other is the policy sphere, and the other is the legislative sphere. So unless you integrate all these spheres, you cannot, make things happen in a better way, which would be beneficial for the country, for the nation. Now, if we start looking when it comes to water into the technical sphere, you will find a whole detail of all the technical studies conducted and available in Pakistan, all the way from late 50s onwards. We have all the water sector strategies prepared. We have all the sites identified. We have all the work done. Water availability is known. Its potential use is known. What kind of crops are going to be grown or known. What are the projections of population? Everything you can find in the annals of record. Then comes the policy. Now, I feel that the policy is basically a bridge between the legislature and the technical and the technocrats. Now, the policymakers need to understand in as much as possible in a best manner that what the technocrats are saying, and then to put it across to the legislature, to the legislative people who can make legislation to regulate the policy and science through law. So you will find a gap. And why is the gap? Whether that gap is because of the incompetence of the policymakers or the bureaucracy, or lack of political capital lying on the part of legislative chaps. So I feel that in Pakistan we only move when there is a pressure from the society. Otherwise we feel that business as usual is perhaps the best choice. So with this I conclude that I sum up that we should be very careful in developing the narrative, and we should be very focused, and at the same time also putting across to the people that why we are saying it is not because to criticize any instrument or treaty, but to raise the alarm or flag that we need to do something which, if not done at this time, it would start haunting us as a nation 20, 30, 40, 50 years down the line. I think it should be clear.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have time for one more question. Yes, madam. Thank you very much, as usual, excellent, and it was very educational for us. I have two questions. Brigadier Janjua said that in his opening remarks, and you ended your presentation with the question mark. So that, as listeners, gives us the idea or the impression that the technical part of the treaty is safeguarded by the IWT, but there are overtones of the political considerations that will always cast a shadow on the treaty. So how much do you think is the treaty held hostage to the political dysfunctional nature between the two countries? Because you did suggest that, we may have lesser or lower threat perceptions if we had better relations. And how much is it important for us as the lower riparian to look into that aspect, looking at the future flow of water under the climate change regime? My second question after listening to your presentation was that, with hindsight, of course, do you think it was a good idea to divide rivers? Or would it have been better to share the waters of all the 6 rivers? Because when we look at now the flows and the distribution and how it's getting the water from source, how do you see that? And lastly, Ambassador Riaz Muhammad Khan asked you this question, but I'd just like you to deepen your response by sharing with us that in the stakeholder group, do you have hydrologists, do you have legal experts, do you have diplomats who sit together and discuss, the future implications that you left with a question mark of the different scenarios, and where would Pakistan be and what strategies should it best adopt? Thank you.
Thank you, Aisha. So if I respond by asking a question to you or to all of you, while taking the benefit of hindsight, can we say that the political relations between Pakistan and India could be better? Or perhaps, so did we miss some opportunities which were otherwise available for both the countries to make their relation, better? This is when it comes to review or scrutinize a treaty. So treaty itself is not perhaps a cause. This is an effect of something. Initially, there are two sovereign states. That is an established political thing. Then their bilateral relation governs. And then the projection of their bilateral relation also governs that what is in their mind in terms of potentials of cooperation or conflict. Basically, this is a conflict and cooperation paradigm. And then there may be, intensities on both the fronts. You can have a high degree of cooperation, and you can also have a lowest ebb of cooperation, and likewise on the conflict side. So in a conflict and cooperation paradigm or matrix, the given circumstances and their projection, to the extent one can do or the nations can do, to the best of their abilities and circumstances, and then overall realpolitik and regional politics and international politics, then these things, come into existence. So saying that this treaty was good, this treaty was bad, this is again a relative term. As I said, that perhaps, answer to your question may be an answer. If I pose this question in the perspective of political relation between the two states, perhaps it would become easier to understand that how good or bad this treaty was and how good or bad this treaty remained under implementation. So we are where we are. But as you asked that whether the political relations between the two states are, affecting the implementation of the treaty or not, I would say that so far this treaty is concerned, this treaty has the framers of its treaty. I would give this credit to them, a compliment, a very big compliment for them, that they tried their best to make it as unvague as possible, as clear, as substantive, in terms of defining the rules, in terms of defining further exceptions, which again, so help to understand the rule and everything. But despite that, if the things are not in a form in which one could expect at the time of doing this deal of effort while framing the treaty, then there must be something. There must be something. And what is that something? We all know, as I said, that this treaty can only be seen in the backdrop of political relation between the two states. I was just reading a book which was, or a report maybe, which was published back in 2010 by IDS. It's a kind of a think tank, New Delhi-based think tank, in which there are professors from Jawaharlal Nehru University and everything. So if you simply read the contents of that, please allow me to open, I don't remember, it is very interesting to share. I'm taking this opportunity of spending this time. So it speaks volume. This is water security for India, the external dynamics, right? Only the contents. It has like 7 chapters when it comes to Pakistan and India. So the chapters are titled as water issues in India-Pakistan relations, water issues in India-Pakistan relations, and water issues in India-China relations. And when it comes to Bangladesh, where the political relations are not good, not bad, then it says the title of the chapter is the India-Bangladesh water sharing, not relations. And when it comes to Nepal and Bhutan, it says that India-Nepal water cooperation and India-Bhutan water cooperation. So you can simply understand that this is how the sovereigns think, and so I stop here.
One last question from Jamal. Yes.
My name is Jamal Aziz from the Research Society of International Law. I just have a comment, sir. I'm obviously very impressed with always by listening to your presentations. आपने सर जो couple of points आपने raise किए regarding the same issue about how the academic community engages with these issues. These are obviously Indian academics at JNU and top universities in India. Then you also talked about the policy gap between the technocrats and legislator. उसमें सर important बात ये है कि in this Indus Water Treaty there is so much of it which is increasingly legal, increasingly technical as well. And in that, it is important that Pakistan starts in its engagement with the IWT, have a domestic community which is well versed with the evolving international law on climate change, environmental law, transboundary water sharing. So many treaties have come about since 1960s within other countries that we can learn from. So much case law. There is now a pending advisory opinion potentially at the ICJ on the legal liability for transboundary water sharing where it is impacted by climate change. So these are things which I feel as an academic and as a someone working in international law, and Maham is my counterpart here. There's another setup at the NDU. We need to start engaging with you so that we get a sense of the technical aspects and you can benefit from our research and academia. And then we need to develop and institute courses at universities because, the current generation is very interested in, all they want to study about is climate change. Our lawyers in different universities, that's what they're gunning for. We have to develop these kind of contextualized courses which look at your concerns, the IWT's background, but also evolving international law so that Pakistan's talking points and your talking points can improve and get enriched as well. So that is just my comment. Thank you, sir.
Very good comment. हम वैसे इसमें normally professional level पे तो lawyers के साथ engage करते हैं, लेकिन ये आपका suggestion बहुत अच्छा है, हमने इसको note किया, हम आप लोगों को very soon हम एक इस किस्म का session start करते हैं, बल्कि इसको formalize करते हैं.
Thank you. And we have one last question from Ambassador Durrani.
Thank you, Shah Sahab. Very educating presentation and prioritized and educated. Well, a lot has been said about the treaty, but a part of the treaty is about the wastewater which falls into Pakistan. Do you have any study which can tell us how much it is impacting Pakistan's environment and how much it is in fact harmful? And do we also share it with India? And what kind of a compensation is given? I don't see in the treaty, but what kind of a negotiations we ever had on that issue? Thank you.
Ambassador Sahab, the treaty does have the provision about the water quality, particularly flowing from the transboundary drains, which I just touched without going into much detail. Even the names of the drains are also defined in the treaty: Salim Shah Drain, Hadyara Drain. Basically, there are drains which used to be the natural depressions, since erstwhile when the canal irrigation system was even not built. So these were the natural depressions just to cater for the storm water, putting it into the deep channels, and then so traversing, so taking them along all the way to the main rivers like Ravi or Satluj, wherever they join them. Then this canal irrigation system was introduced, and then there was a formal requirement of the agricultural drainage. So initially, as a preference, those natural depressions were considered to be developed in a more geometric form and a precise form, and then further additions were also made. So at the time of signing of the treaty, so it was agreed upon between the two states that the geometry, like the size and shape of the drain, and the quality of the water which was flowing on the effective date of the treaty, that was 1st of April 1960. Both the parties would endeavor to maintain those and would continuously exchange these information with each other. So since 1960, this information is getting exchanged between the two parties. Like we also send on our part, because if we modify the size of the drain, then it will have a consequence on the Indian side. And if they modify the size of the drain, it will have a consequence on Pakistan side. Similar, and the same goes for the quality. Naturally, if the quality of the runoff flowing into the drain in the Indian side will be to the detriment of Pakistan, and but not in case of Pakistan. So both of these sides exchange these data, and these data are obtained from the concerned departments. Like Pakistan Council of Research in Water Resources is here. They have their own laboratories to collect samples and test them in terms of their water quality according to the accepted standards. So we take help from them. We take help from the Punjab Irrigation Department, because Punjab Irrigation Department is the custodian of those drains when those enter from India to Pakistan. And we, like the Pakistan Commissioner for Indus Water, also frequently visit those sites. Like before Ramadan, I also visited Suleiman Ki Barrage on Fazilka drains. So we also continue visiting those drains to see their geometry. So that is available. And precipitation is shifted. Yeah, perturbance, it is basically perturbing for everyone, not for India. If the nature starts changing in a big way, then it is perturbing.
Thank you, everyone. That brings us to the end of today's session. Thank you, sir, for joining us. I would now like to request Ambassador Dr. Raza Mohammed to say a few words. Thank you.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. And especially, I would like to thank the excellencies, ex-ambassadors, Ms. Aisha Khan, and all those who are here, the practitioners, the lawyers, the media people. Thank you so much for joining us today. And more importantly, we are grateful to the Mayor Ali Shah Sahib for taking this time out and speak on this very, very important subject. Actually, people started getting worried in Pakistan after we received a letter from India to kind of propose the amendments in the Indus Water Treaty. We went straight away to webinars, and a podcast was done by Maham and Amir Bilal Sufi. Then we had certain op-eds, and we have been in touch with the Indus Water Commissioner, Mayor Ali Shah Sahib. Naturally, it worries us all. Future kya hoga. But I think one thing which is very good in the treaty, which binds both the parties, is that it cannot be unilaterally or abrogated or unilaterally amended. I think someone put a very, very good clause and a very strong clause in it, which binds both the parties legally to do everything and anything with mutual consensus. And I think this is one of those things which favors us. Secondly, we were discussing before I went out for the NSD meeting. We had a discussion. Mayor Ali Shah Sahib was with us in the lounge. I think he very aptly said that shukar hai ki ye ho gayi. Agar na hui hoti, whatever happened after 1960, the 62's war, the China-India war, then 65 war and all that, to reh jana tha. And the kind of attitude which India is displaying now, the arrogance and the relevance in the international arena, makes them actually unmanageable for us. And it would have been very unmanageable agar ye treaty no hui hoti. To shukr Allah ka hui hui hai. So I am sure that we'll keep moving forward and working on it. And I think a very good suggestion came from Jamal. Jamal kidhar baithe hu hain? Acha, sorry, I heard you. I think it's a very good suggestion. You, IPRI, and RSIL or the Center for Law in the NDU can jointly work on this and kind of start courses or do some workshops or empower these students and media people and others on greater knowledge for the Indus Water Treaty. Thank you so much for being here, sir. We are very grateful, and I hope it is not the end. It is a new beginning of cooperation between you and us to work on a thing which is of significance to whole the country. Thank you so much for being here.
Ji, sir. Thank you for joining us. You're all welcome to tea now. Thank you.